A very interesting conversation right here on Africa 4-in-1, and of course tonight our focus is on women and political leadership. We definitely have had scenarios where most people have said that women have large numbers, they have the numbers, and of course politics, as far as many are concerned, is usually a game of numbers. But the concerning affair or issue here is that very few women have been able to take up or been elected in position of leadership. As we speak today, we have one African country that has a female president, and that is Ethiopia. And of course, we understand that Rwanda has the highest number of women parliamentarians worldwide, where women have won 61.3% of seats in the lower house. And of course tonight our question is on why this particular scenario, and I have Natalie Rodriguez, who's actually joining us all the way from Jamaica. She is actually running for office. Natalie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Right. I also know that we have Nerea, who's actually was participating in the Miss President contest here in Kenya. Nerea, also thank you so much for being a part of this conversation tonight.
Glad to be in. Thank you.
Real quick, before we even delve deeper in this particular conversation, I also know Maureen is here with us, and she's with the Organization of Women Leadership. And of course, I want just to understand, let me start with you, Maureen, before I go to Nerea and Natalie. What is going on? Only 24.5% in 2013, these are women or their accountability as far as those who are in politics in parliament at the parliamentary level. What is the problem? Why is it that we're not seeing more women in political leadership despite their numbers in mobilizing for votes during elections?
All right, thank you very much. First and foremost, TV47 Kenya. Like the presenter have mentioned, my name is Maureen Omeibe, Dean of Coordinators African Women in Leadership Organization. That's a very important question, and I'm very glad that we're having this conversation today. Because the story has been an ugly one, and it is continuing. I mean, it is getting worse and worse year in, year out across the African nations. And it's important we continue to bring these conversations to the front burner for the world to listen to us and know that it is a problem.
Right.
Yes, back to your question, you asked what is happening. What is happening about women's political representation in Africa is not a new phenomenon. It's something that has been on, it's something that some of us grew up to meet. And one of the major challenges that we have had in Africa is that the African culture do not allow the woman to grow ambition. The woman is not encouraged to have political ambition. It starts from the cradle. And if as a child, a girl child is growing up, is not being encouraged to be able to grow and define her position, it becomes very, very difficult. So it's first and foremost psychological.
Right.
The environment, the cultural environment of the African nation has always mitigated a woman's capacity to aspire and not ambition for political positions.
Right. I know we'll be digging deeper into this. I know we'll be digging deeper into this, but Natalie, we are in the 21st century. We've had this for a long time, that the culture does not allow the woman to actually, stand up for political leadership or just leadership for that particular matter. Tell me something different that we haven't had. I'm not trying to downplay that fact, but I want us to understand whether we are, hiding behind this issue of culture and why we have not been able to dismantle it in the 21st century. Natalie.
Let me tell you, while I agree with Maureen, I think it's a little bit more. I think as women, we're afraid. We're afraid of taking, because it's a huge step. It is seen as a very rough thing to do. And many of us as Black women don't want to be seen as rough or abrasive. So I think that's a part of it. We're also still seen as women as caregivers primarily. Politics is time consuming. It takes hours. This is not my first time going into politics, Eugene, and I had to take a step back to raise my children. That is the reality of life. That's how I met you in Rwanda. Rwanda because I was on this hiatus from my political career to grow my children and to follow my husband to build his career. So the reality is it is time consuming for us women. If you do it, you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot of yourself and your identity as a woman, as is often recognized in the Caribbean and African culture. You won't be able to do all the school events. So if you're still in those ages when you want to have children and raise them, it's very difficult for you to go into politics. So while I understand the issue of culture, there is also, and it's expensive. Politics is not cheap. So you have to be willing to put forward that financial investment. So it's emotional, it's mental, it's physical, and it's financial. And there is also a fact that many of us don't like to talk about. Sometimes as women, we don't support each other enough. So the women will be the one in the constituencies and they are happy to do all the organizing and stuff. But there are instances when those same women prefer to support a male candidate than a female candidate. Thank heavens I'm not experiencing that right now in my campaign, but it is a reality of part of the reason women don't go up there, because they just don't feel they'll get the support that they need to from their fellow women. Right.
So you mentioned several things which are very interesting. Before I want to bring in Maureen on this now. You say that one, politics is very expensive. Two, women have just been perceived as caregivers. You say, you know what, you seem to be designed to just want to take care of your family, and you would actually give up your political ambitions and career to just take care of the family. But what is interesting is what you just said lastly right there, that most women do not stand up for fellow women during voting and during the time of making these decisions to support them to take up these particular leadership roles. Maureen, even if we park all these things aside and ask ourselves, what do people want? Do they want a leader because that leader is a woman, or it doesn't really matter? All we need is just a leader. I mean, should we be thinking about it from a gender microscope, or it doesn't really matter as long as someone has leadership skills, which probably this is what people have been looking at to vote for the men we see in these particular leadership positions? Is this how you look at it?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, myself being a development enthusiast, I would like to be looking at these things, not just from a gender lens, but from a lens of a woman who has national development as one of my key interests in life. When you look at it properly, it is not just because they are women that we are asking that they should be given a position. But if you look at history, in the political realm, the history spells out that larger percentage of men have always taken up the position. They have been in charge for a very long time. So the question we should be asking is, beyond the agitation that women should be given equal rights, equal opportunities, equal access to all these positions, the authority, the power, the means, what question we should ask is, how far have the men gone? If at this point, after several decades, for instance, we got our independence 50-something years ago, and since then, men have been in charge. The question should be, how far have they gone? Have they fared well? In terms of national development, how far have they fared? Have they contributed effectively to the development of nations across Africa? If the question is no, then in the process of researching to know the reason why we have had developmental failures, I do not want to generalize, but I would like to tell you that most African nations are having developmental failures, and it is attributed to the poor leadership that we are having in Africa. So if men have been in charge, I would like to say, let me finish. Yes. If men have been in charge, then the question should be, what is the problem? What is giving rise to the inefficiency and the poor productivity level of our leaders? So it is just important for us to know that from research, one of those reasons is that a half of the population of each African country is missing, apart from Rwanda, is missing in leadership activities, is missing in leadership functions, is missing in decision making. And what that means is that half of that population is not being utilized. Their capacity is being left behind in the development process of our countries across Africa. And it is not good. It's wrong. So it's not about that we are asking for women to be given opportunity because we are women. As a matter of fact, in politics, nobody gives anybody opportunity. Nobody steps up for this. People have to fight in the political process. People have to fight in the political space to be able to get. But what I'm saying is this: if all these years men have been in charge and the report is not so good, why can't we, integrate this other population that has been left behind and see what happens?
Right.
But we must also take responsibility.
Then let me also finish.
Yes.
If we look at Rwanda that has 61.25 in their representation,
yes,
I would like us to know where they are coming from, and I would like us to also look at the progression, the progress that they have achieved within this short period of time, because women are well represented. So I think we should be talking about tapping into the capabilities of human beings. When we are talking about leadership, when we are talking about development, when we are talking about transformation in any society, human capacity cannot be left by the side. And what the African women have achieved so far, the level that they have attained, is showing that they have come of age. They have a lot to offer. They have a lot to bring to the table. So we are losing out when we are neglecting them and when we are neglecting their inclusion in the political process.
Right. Maureen and Natalie, I wanted to pose a bit. I want us to bring in Nerea, who's been listening keenly on this particular conversation since the time we started. Nerea, you actually participated in a contest that actually was sort of aimed at mirroring or trying to show us an image of a president who's a female, and you participated in this particular contest, a Miss President here in Kenya. You've listened to Maureen and Natalie argue out their points. We've heard that politics is very expensive. We've also heard that women in their nature are, caregivers. They feel like they can easily sacrifice their political careers in order to take care of their families. But then most importantly, there's been this point by Natalie that most women do not support fellow women when it comes to, these elective positions. Talk to me about what you feel from where you sit, because Maureen also says that we have seen a lot of failures in Africa today because those in leadership are men. If we had women presidents, like we have men right now in African leadership, would the picture be different, in your opinion?
Thank you, Eugene. And I have, been listening and trying to weigh, the conversations that we have as women and looking at, to what extent we, number one, competitively get into political leadership, and number two, to what extent should we then rely on affirmative action to get more women into leadership? Because in my experience, if a woman competes against men, the victory is usually hard-earned, but well-earned. And so in terms of representation, they see a lot of substantive representation from that woman. And ideally, I do not need to campaign for women to be president in a country simply because we have never seen, the brilliance that comes out of that leadership. I think, that is sort of taking a simplistic, opinion and point of view. I think what we need to look at is, even if a woman were to be elected president, what governance systems exist in a particular country that will make that woman succeed as a president? And to what extent can that woman be able to influence and shape government policy?
Right, Nerea, we seem to be having some issues with your signal, but of course, let me bring in Natalie here. But Natalie, when we look at the photo ops of, leaders of the African Union, when they meet and they pose for those particular photos, you'd have to zoom in to actually see a woman in that particular picture. How does this make you feel as a woman?
Our political systems are still old boys clubs
Yeah.
to a large extent. And as I say, there's responsibility on everybody's side. There's responsibilities. The responsibility is on the governance structures to allow for more women to want to and to be able to participate. And at the same time, us women need to want to take the gamble and be strong enough and to have the family and friendship supports in order to take the big step. Now, I am not one who is for a governance system, though, which dictates how many women should be there, because that in itself brings its own challenges, because just to have a woman in the position for the sake of having a woman is not enough. Because we have seen examples in other countries where in order to meet the quota of women, I mean, there are countries where it works. So let's say, for example, Rwanda, it works, but we all know Rwanda is the exception to most rules. But you have other countries where there's a quota system, and those women go to parliament and still do not do anything specific for women or children. They do what the men who put them in that place require of them to do. And so it has to be a whole systemic change. It can't be to fill a position and because you want to have women. It has to be women who actually want to do this and have the support to do it. Now, recently in Jamaica, we have had the death of a woman, a minister of government, Shaini Robinson. She was our minister of labor and security in Jamaica, social security in Jamaica. And she just died a few days ago. And it caused me to reflect, because this is one of the sweetest souls you'll ever meet. In any category, in any profession, but as a woman in politics. And I think what happened is why she's so admired is because she did it without losing her womanhood. She was still, a lot of us who go into politics, we become a little rougher. We become a little more aggressive than we would normally be. And we feel that we have to become more like the men in order to survive. But Minister Robinson did it and maintained who she was as a lady, and was so highly successful. So there are a lot of factors, but I think more than anything else, we just need that support in order to do it. And men need to step up and help in the household so that we have the free time to go and do this.
Right, perfect. Maureen, before we take a break and fix Nerea's signal, I want to read your thoughts on Nigeria, for example. I know it's one of the world's most populous countries, and of course we know that the numbers of women there are quite, substantive enough to be able to put a woman into the political position of any sort. We know during the elections, Madame Ezekwesili did have she didn't carry on to the end, or even if she would have, probably she was not going to win. Talk to me about the aspect of women for women, which Natalie mentioned earlier on, that is missing in the equation of ensuring that women are sent to power or positions of leadership. What is wrong with a majority of women who do not support fellow women? What usually causes this?
Thank you very much, You see, just like my co-panelist just said, that everybody has some level of responsibility in carving for a change in the political system of African nations.
Right. Maureen, we seem to have a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
It's better now. Good.
Okay. All right. I said one of the major reasons why the African Women in Leadership Organization was formed was to begin to address these problems from the roots, because it is something that gave rise to something. Why so many women out there believes that women don't support each other? I would like to toe a different line at this point in time because of the experience I've garnered over the years as a member of the African Women in Leadership Organization. Why sometimes women lose hope in supporting other women is because the structure that the other woman is utilizing to source for his political power or authority. Even a lay person that doesn't know anything about politics, we know that even if that woman gets to the poll, that is going to fail. So for instance, when we talk about the political process, when we take a look at our political legislation, that's our political laws, that's the electoral process laws, you will say that despite the fact that they gave women some windows of opportunity by letting them, allowing them to procure political party, forms without payment. Because some parties in my country, for instance, you pay as much as 20 million to get a political form. That is a form that will enable you to run for any office.
Yeah.
Now, women are giving the widow, okay, do not pay this money, procure these forms free. But that did not remove the fact that the entire process is monetized. So if a woman came and picked up a form free of charge, and go into campaigns, and here, in fact, we shouldn't. How many women has what it takes to go walk into banks, institutions, and take money for running office? You can't do it, but the man has the free hand to do that. That is number one. Then secondly, men lobby a lot, and you see a lot of things happening when a man comes out that he wants to run. Who does that for the woman? Nobody. So the point is that if who wants to run for a political office, and you find out that if the counterpart is running about 12 different rallies in the state, the woman is just doing one because he's incapacitated. So you see other parties going into television, spending millions of naira to do campaigns, to talk to, and go to everywhere that they need to go, and speak to every person that they need to speak to. You find out the woman is highly limited because he does not have the economic power. So even, but it is not, I would not say, I can also argue that women don't support women, but no, there is an underlying factor. It is the fact that even before the woman goes to the poll, the woman has already failed. And like I said before, when it is politics, it has to do with a psychology. There's a type of psychology that is innate that people need to deal with to win political posts.
Right.
And what I'm saying is, when you see a woman going to poll and you look behind her and you're just seeing few number of persons, I mean, it does not encourage anybody, both men and women.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. I want us to take a quick break, take a breather, allow what we've talked about to sink in. But when we come back, we move this conversation forward. Of course, we'll be asking ourselves whether people should be voting for manifestos or based on gender. And of course, we'll be trying to dig a bit deeper on that and look at the issue of the nature of politics across Africa. We've seen a lot of violence in parts of Africa when it comes to elections. They've always been seen as a murky affair, and we'll be talking a bit about how challenging that is for both genders when it comes to vying for political positions. Stay with us. That is Nerea, Maureen, and Natalie in Jamaica. Thank you so much for still being with us. I want you to keep tweeting us. All you need to do is add the hashtag Africa411. Let us know your thoughts on why we are seeing very few women in political leadership, despite the large numbers of women when it comes to voting and mobilizing for votes. I know on Facebook we have Yule who says there is nothing hindering women to run for the seats. The assumption being made is that politics is for men, hence women find it awkward, making them not to stand against men. I want to hear from our panelists on their thoughts on this one and much more when we come back. Stay with us.